You are doing it wrong. That is not just the thumbnail, that is the truth. And this video is called How to Track Food Accurately for Weight Loss because most of you have tracked before, but you didn't get the result that you were after. And the reality is you're dialed in with your numbers when it comes to business. You track expenses, cash flow, ad spend, revenue, and you wouldn't dream of just winging it with those numbers. But when it comes to your body and your health, you guess, you estimate, you hope, and then you wonder why nothing changes. Now, to date, I myself have personally coached over 1,000 clients to a combined total of over 10,000 plus pounds lost. And I'll tell you right now, the difference between the ones who win and the ones who stay stuck is precision. Now, I had to learn this the hard way myself when I was a college athlete turned weightlifter, turned MMA guy. I thought I was eating clean and active enough that I didn't have to worry too much about my calorie intake. But then 4 years had gone by, and I realized I'd gained 25 pounds since the end of my collegiate athletics career. So at that point in time, I started tracking my food and realized I was eating 1,200 calories more per day than I thought. I literally bulked up by accident. And this is a guy who was formally educated in exercise science and nutrition. I'd been a college athlete, an NCAA strength and conditioning coach, worked with hundreds of clients myself at that point already. And even I was inaccurately estimating my own food intake. And that was the epiphany that caused me to become so obsessed with food tracking accuracy. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how to track your food correctly without wasting time overthinking it or letting it run your life. And side note, this is a little bit of a follow-up to a video I made last week where I broke down my food quality versus food quantity beliefs. And you don't necessarily need to watch that first, but if you like this video and you want to have a full picture of how I approach weight loss and my philosophy, go back and watch that, and I'll probably link it in the description below. So let's dive into the video. Now, the first thing that I want to do is actually present you a study, and it's a pretty renowned one. It's been around since 1992. It was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, and it breaks down the discrepancy between people's reported caloric intake and activity levels versus their actual. And the reason that I want to present this to you is because it's a deep examination of the energy balance model as a whole, or calories in, calories out, which obviously in today's world, a lot of people have critiques of, but it's been proven time and time again. So specifically for this study, what they did is they examined a group of subjects who were reporting that they had diet resistance, effectively meaning that no matter how few calories they consumed, they just could not lose weight. So they decided to study it. And what they found with the group who claimed to be diet resistance, they were saying, hey, I'm only eating 1,200 or less calories per day, which is very, very low calorie. I don't recommend that you do that. They found that that group was underreporting their calorie intake by 47%. And that same exact group was over-reporting their physical activity by 51%. So they put this group of subjects up against a control group, and they even examined their actual metabolic rates, and they found there was no difference in their metabolic rates either, meaning it wasn't a case of this group who claimed diet resistance was actually having like hypothyroidism or thyroid health problems or hormone issues, nothing that would contribute medically to them not losing the weight. It was purely the fact that they were underreporting intake, overreporting output. So this story obviously proved a lot of things in this world of weight loss, but the most important takeaway for the purpose of this video is that the biggest contributing factor to whether or not you lose weight is actually your accuracy in your reporting. Now, that does include food intake and physical activity output. Obviously, in this video, we're going to be focusing on the food intake part of the equation. So I think the most effective way to deliver this to you is to go through a tracking process, literally step by step. And the first step is actually just having somewhere to track it. So you really have two options there. You can either have an app or some sort of spreadsheet and do it manually. Personally, while you can do it manually, I think it's super inefficient. And if you're watching this and you're a business owner or just somebody who's busy in general, you probably don't want to go through the headache of doing your own math and doing all the calculations in a sheet and setting it all up unless you're some Excel wizard. Just download an app. Realistically, there's dozens of them, and the most popular one is probably MyFitnessPal, and that's a really simple, easy, beginner-friendly one that you can use. So that's typically what I tell people to go to just for a free application that they can use. Now, our clients actually have an in-house app, a private app that they use that come with all the features. Something like MyFitnessPal is typically going to charge you a little bit more for features like scanning barcodes and things like that, but you may be able to find one for free that includes the barcode scan where you don't have to pay for it. But I digress. Pick an app to track your nutrition in. There's a bunch of them out there. Now, once you have an app, The most convenient feature that most of these apps are going to have is a barcode scanner tool. So literally the same barcode that you would scan when you're leaving the grocery store is the same barcode that you're going to scan to have a pop-up that presents you the nutrition facts of that food item. Now, the biggest thing that you'll have to do on your end once this pops up is you're going to have to be able to accurately describe how much of that thing that you consumed. And this is usually where people go wrong because they don't know how to read a nutrition label. They've never been taught that. And if they were taught it, it was in middle school health class and they forgot by now. So I'm going to cut over quick to just some simple tips and tricks on how to actually read that nutrition label accurately. So what you'll see on the screen in front of you is just a pop-up of a basic nutrition label that I'm going to break down for you, because generally when you scan a barcode in an app, you're going to see a pop-up similar to this. It's going to have some basic facts on the calories and the macronutrients contained in that item that you just scanned, and what you're going to be tasked with is selecting the quantity. And again, this is where people go awry because they don't understand how to read this. A lot of folks will see a nutrition label, they'll consume the entire container of something and then assume that 230 calories is what they had. Whole container, oh, I had 230 calories of that thing. But what they don't understand is that on these labels, it will tell you how many servings there are per container. So whatever this mystery item is, I have no idea actually what it is, that's up in front of you. If you were to consume the whole box of it, it's not 230 calories, it's 230 times 8. Right? So we're talking about 1,600 something calories, right? I know it's a little bit more than that, but we're not going to do the math right here. But that's actually what you ate. So when you read the label and when you scan the barcode, you have to be a little bit tactical about how much of that thing that you're consuming. So you literally should measure it. That's the correct way to do it. That's the proper way to do it. And according to this item, the serving size is 2/3 of a cup. So if you were going to do this right and have one serving of that item and you were going to plug it into your app as one serving, you should literally take out a measuring cup that is a 2/3 cup and fill it, and that's one serving. Now, your other option that you'll see next to it is it actually has the weight by grams. So your other option is pulling out a food scale, putting something on it, zeroing it, and adding into that container until it hits 55 grams on the food scale. That's how you know how much you're having from a quantity perspective when you scan a barcode. So you actually have to measure it. Yes, this will sometimes entail having measuring cups. This will sometimes entail having a food scale. I'm going to show you an example of how to use that properly in a little bit in this video. But that's a brief overview of, hey, when you see that pop up in the barcode, you need to make sure that you are selecting the correct quantity that you actually consumed of that item. And please don't eyeball it. Actually measure it. If you eyeball it, you are more likely by a ton to be incorrect. Remember how I gained all that weight being somebody who's educated on this? It's because I was eyeballing and I thought I was too smart to weigh it. Even with the knowledge that I have now, even years later, thousands of clients later, I can't effectively eyeball. I can get into a ballpark range, but it's still not even close to as precise as if I just busted out a food scale or measuring cups to actually get the quantifiable numbers. So yes, you have to put in some effort here. Now, what happens if you scan a barcode and that item doesn't actually show up in the app? It's not in the app's database. What do you do then? Well, now that you have a general idea of how to interpret a nutrition label, you should be able to have a little bit more success, but there's a few more key factors that I want to tell you about. Now, let's say you scan a barcode and that food item doesn't show up. It's not registering in the app's database. There's a few kind of solutions to this. One of them is a manual entry into the app. You might be able to actually search the exact food item and the brand and the type that it is and then have it pull up. The other one is a manual entry of the food item. So you'd have to create a custom item effectively. I'm going to show you the solution for both. So I'm going to use this carton of egg whites that I found in my fridge for the first example, which is, hey, it didn't show up when you scanned it on the barcode, but you go in to search the food item. How do you search it properly? Because what you wouldn't want to do, and this is a mistake that a lot of people make, is they just search, for example, egg whites, and then they just pick the top selection. What you should be doing is you should be nailing it all the way down to the brand. So for this, it's Simple Truth Organic, cage-free, 100% liquid egg whites. And how you know you found the right one is when you see that food item pop up, you then cross-reference your nutrition facts label. And so if the item that pops up matches this, which for mine it says 25 calories, serving size is 3 tablespoons, 5 grams of protein, then I know that I have the right pick. Now, technically, if you find an alternative that isn't the exact same brand, but the nutrition facts label matches it, you're fine to use that. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen people try to just plug in egg whites, or maybe egg whites is a bad example because you can't really mess up egg whites, but let's say it was a protein bar and they just put in protein bar and click the top option. Every protein bar has a different set of nutrients on it, and you could massively misconstrue your tracking by not nailing it all the way down to the brand, the type, the flavor, etc. All the details that are on the packaging, when you try to search for a food item in that app's food library, you should get down to a T. Now, the second option here is, again, when you search all of that, you put all of the branding, all the labeling in, and you can't find a match, and you have to do a custom food item. Again, a lot of apps will have this feature. You can do a custom entry. You're going to click, plus custom entry, and you can name it as accurately as you want to name it. It's really for your own reference at the end of the day. But then you need to plug in everything on the label. So let's cut back to the label real quick so I can show you what to actually put in on the manual entry or the custom entry. Okay, so we're back looking at the generic food label that I showed you earlier. Here's everything that you would need to put into the app to make sure that when you track it in the future, it doesn't mess up or cause errors for you. You need to nail all of this. So the serving size will give you an option. You need to make sure that you enter 2/3 cup serving size or 55 grams, whatever unit of measurement is more convenient for you. You need to make sure that the calories are entered properly. You need to make sure that the fat is entered properly, the carbohydrates, and the protein. Everything else in between, like if you want to also add saturated fat and it gives you the option, if you also want to add sodium and it gives you the option, if you want to add the fiber or the sugars, if you want to add any of these micronutrients, you can. But in terms of what's going to have the biggest predictor and the biggest factor of success in you losing the weight sustainably, it's going to be the macronutrients. So it's going to be the calories, the fat, the carbs, and the protein. Those are going to be your biggest ones. And again, if you want my full ideology on that, go back and watch the video before this where I talk about food quantity versus food quality. It'll give you more clarity on it. But for the terms of weight loss and what we're doing here, you don't necessarily need to worry about the little metrics. Again, the little micronutrients, things like that. You don't need to worry about that. Okay, but add that to the custom food item, and then you'll be able to reference back to that when you have that same food item again in the future. You have it saved to your food library. So far we have covered picking an app, how to use the barcode feature, how to read and interpret a label, and it leaves us with one final situation, which is what if you have a food item that doesn't have a barcode or a nutrition label on it at all? So realistically, when you're gonna find yourself in a spot like this is if you're doing farm to table and you're literally going to like farmers markets and you're buying something and they're just like, hey, it's just ground beef. You want some and you just get it, you take it home. So it's a very like organic path. You're probably not gonna find yourself in this situation too often, assuming you're going to a grocery store, but there are some people that truly go farm to table and they run into this as an issue. So the other time this becomes an issue is when other people are preparing food for you, and usually in a like restaurant or family setting where again, you don't have control over what's necessarily being put in front of you. How do you estimate what's going on there calorically? So first things first, you need to gather as much information as you can. Specifically, when we're talking about meats or protein sources, you want to figure out what the actual percentage of fat that item has. And the ground meats is a really good example because if you're talking about 70-30 ground beef versus 93-7 ground beef, those are completely different calorie and macronutrient profiles. Now, the same thing will go for something like a cut of steak. A ribeye is going to have a completely different macronutrient profile than a fillet. So you need to know these things. You need to be generally aware. If you want to use chicken as an example, we're talking about chicken thighs versus chicken breasts versus chicken tenderloins. Those are all different cuts. They all have different nutrient profiles. If we're talking about fried versus grilled versus skinless versus boneless versus bone-in, these are all factors that you have to consider to get the most accurate gauge of what that macronutrient profile and that calorie profile looks like for what you're about to consume that doesn't have a label or doesn't have a barcode. Now, if you have the convenience of a scale close to you, you should absolutely use it. So when you're cooking at home and you run into this situation where you have some unlabeled, unbarcoded food, it's as simple as pulling out the food scale. So I'll use my food scale that I have laying around the house. Literally, it's as simple as putting it on a flat, even, hard surface, zeroing it out, adding whatever cup or bowl or plate that you're gonna put the food item on, putting it on the scale, zero it out, select the unit that you want to use. So I have ounces selected right now, and then you would add whatever it is that you want to add to the measuring component once this thing is zeroed out and you have the proper unit selected. So if I bring back the egg whites as an example, I would literally just open this up and pour it in until I get my desired ounces of egg whites. And if you want a little pro tip here, what I recommend is actually matching the unit to whatever the measuring unit is on the food label. So this says 3 tablespoons, so I could technically take out a measuring cup and just go 3 tablespoons into this. But it also says 46 grams. So I could just adjust my scale to say grams. And once I get it to grams, I'll just pour this in here until the scale says 46, and I'll know that's 1 serving. If I want 2 servings, I do 46 times 2. So what's the quick math on that? 92. Right? I would fill this until it's 92 grams, and I know now I have 2 servings of this item. But again, let's say hypothetically you don't have a barcode or you don't have a nutrition label like I do with my little egg white carton. Same thing goes. I'm going to put it on the scale, zero out the measuring device, and add it until I get however many portions, or just literally weigh the whole thing. It's like, oh, this is a 6-ounce piece of meat, whatever it is. You're just going to get an idea of what that is. And then this is where you need to leverage things like AI or Google and search engines. Because at that point in time, once you have added the thing and you've measured it and you're saying, hey, I have 6 ounces of this beef, you can literally just go into any sort of LLM or AI service device and put in a prompt that says, hey, on average, what are the typical calories and macros of 6 ounces of either cooked or uncooked, cooked, say 93.7 ground beef? Oh, by the way, it's Kirkland brand. All of those details, the more that you get, the better. And you just put all of those details in the prompt and say, hey, on average, what are my calories and macros going to be? And it's going to tell you, and it's going to be relatively accurate. It's not perfect, which is why you need to measure, and which is why it's always more ideal to have something that has a barcode that pops up or a nutrition label on it. But it can get you a halfway decent estimate. But the most important thing to remember when you're prompting AI or when you're using Google to find this out is the details matter, the same way they matter when you're searching in the food library of an app. You need to get as specific as humanly possible. If it's Kirkland brand, non-organic, skinless, boneless chicken thighs, you need to say all of that in the prompt. Because if you change just one thing from skinless to skin on, it's going to give you a completely different reading, and that could vary your daily calories or your daily protein or your daily fat by literally 10, 20, 30%. So the more specific you get, the better. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, oh my God, this is great information. Can you just like have a camera over your shoulder while you do it and show me step by step the implementation of how you do this day by day? Give me a day in the life of Joey and how to track every little thing so you can see it in real life, in real time? The answer is yes, I technically could give that to you. However, and you might not like what I'm about to say here, I prefer not to do that here for free on YouTube because I have paying clientele who have given me their hard-earned money to show them how to implement this properly. So again, you might not like that, but personally, I find it relatively disrespectful to just come on here and give away everything for free that people have paid a pretty penny to actually have access to. Now again, totally understand if that rubs you wrong and you think I'm being a paywall gatekeeping a-hole, but I'm just being honest about how I feel giving everything away when I have people who pay for that information. Totally happy to give you concepts, general research, general overview here on YouTube, but if you want the direct implementation, that is why I have paid services, and you'll find the link to those in the description below. Now, the second reason that I don't just give you an over-the-shoulder look is not just the fact that I have paying customers that I'm trying to actually make sure I'm fair to. The second reason is actually just the nuance of the fact that you might have a different app than me. You might have a different scale than me. You might have different shopping habits than me. You might go to a different grocery store than me. You might have different brands than me. There's just so much nuance that if I gave you it all here on YouTube, without being able to have a direct one-on-one conversation with you, I would actually probably lead you further astray than further to the actual point at hand, because you might be more confused. Where again, with my paying clients, I say, hey, get this scale. Hey, use my app. Hey, use this food brand. And it's very streamlined. It makes a ton of sense. So as for this video, that wraps up everything that I wanted to cover here. If you enjoyed it, do all the YouTube stuff. And again, if you're interested in actually becoming one of my clients, there's going to be links to do that in the description below. It'll be very clear. You'll be able to see straight away where it is. But other than that, hope you enjoyed. Do all the YouTube stuff. See you in the next one.